They say actions speak louder than words, but what if the most powerful action is saying nothing at all? We've been taught that confrontation requires words, that battles are won through arguments, outbursts, and heated exchanges. But the truth is, silence is a far more devastating weapon. It lingers. It forces the mind to spiral into uncertainty, and in many cases, it delivers more pain than any insult ever could. When someone is ignored, their mind begins to race. Why am I being ignored? What did I do wrong? Do they not care anymore? Am I no longer important? These questions dig deep, planting seeds of insecurity, regret, and even self-destruction. Tonight, we dive into the power of silent revenge, the science behind why being ignored is more painful than being attacked, the hidden psychology of why silence makes people desperate for your attention, and how walking away without a word can be the ultimate payback. Because sometimes the most deafening sound is the one they never hear. Silence is often mistaken for weakness. Society teaches us that if we don't speak up, we aren't standing our ground, that if we don't argue back, we are letting someone win. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Psychologists have studied the effects of silence in conflict, and the results are staggering. When someone is insulted or yelled at, they have something to react to. They can push back, defend themselves, or even justify their actions. But when they are met with silence, they are left alone with their own thoughts. And that, in many cases, is far more painful. This is why the silent treatment has been used as a form of psychological punishment for centuries. In relationships, workplaces, and even prisons, isolation has been proven to cause distress, self-doubt, and even mental breakdowns. Because nothing is more unsettling than being erased from someone's world without an explanation. Think about the last time someone ignored you, the unanswered text, the phone call that was never returned, the sudden distance from someone you once spoke to every day, that hollow feeling in your chest, that burning question of why. It's not just emotional, it's psychological. Your brain sees silence as a rejection, triggering the same pain receptors as physical injury. And this is why silence is such a powerful tool, because while words can be dismissed, silence forces a person to reflect. People expect confrontation, they prepare for it, they have defenses built for arguments, comebacks ready for insults, but what they are never prepared for is being ignored. When you lash out at someone, they can frame you as the villain. They can convince themselves that you're overreacting, that they were right all along. But when you say nothing, that's when doubt starts creeping in. What if they don't care anymore? What if they've moved on? What if I was wrong? These thoughts become relentless, gnawing away at their confidence. And the more time passes, the stronger the effect becomes. This is why toxic people, manipulators, narcissists, and emotional abusers hate being ignored. They thrive on engagement, on provoking a reaction. To them, even anger is a form of attention. It reassures them that they still have power over you. But when you go silent, when you remove yourself completely from their reach, that's when they truly begin to unravel. Because silence is not just the absence of noise. It is the withdrawal of energy. It is the moment someone realizes that they no longer have a hold on you. And that realization, it shatters them in ways words never could. There is a reason why some of the most powerful people in the world speak the least. Silence commands respect. It forces people to listen. It makes every word you do choose to say hold more weight. Think about a time you were in a conversation and someone suddenly went quiet. The shift in energy, the uncertainty of what they were thinking, it made you uncomfortable, didn't it? That's because silence forces us to pay attention. It creates a vacuum, one that the human mind is desperate to fill. In negotiations, the most skilled individuals know that sometimes saying nothing is the best strategy. When you don't react immediately, when you let the other person sit with their own words, they often reveal more than they intended. They scramble to fill the silence, to explain themselves, to seek validation. And in doing so, they expose their weaknesses. This is why silence is used in interrogations, in business meetings, in power struggles. It is a technique that unsettles, disrupts, and ultimately controls the conversation. If you stop texting someone and they never reach out again, what does that tell you? If you stop making the effort and they don't even notice, what does that reveal? Silence exposes the truth. It strips away the illusions, the excuses, the fake apologies. It shows you who was really there and who was just using your attention as a convenience. Because people who care, truly care, don't let silence last. They don't ignore the absence of someone important to them. They don't sit comfortably in the distance. They reach out, they make things right, they show that they value the connection. But those who were never genuine, they let the silence sit. And that in itself is all the closure you will ever need. So what happens when you use silence as a weapon? When you choose to walk away, to remove your energy, to let your absence speak louder than any words could? At first, they may not notice. They may think it's temporary, that you'll eventually reach out again. But as time passes, doubt creeps in. The ego begins to crumble. They start to realize that the control they once had over you is slipping away. And then something shifts. The same person who once took you for granted begins to wonder if they made a mistake. They replay old conversations, analyzing every detail. They question their decisions, wondering if they pushed you too far. And in their mind, you become larger than life, because now your silence is haunting them. This is the beauty of silent revenge. It doesn't require anger, aggression, or confrontation. It doesn't require you to prove anything. It only requires patience and the ability to let go. Because silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of power, and those who understand its power never have to raise their voice to be heard. Next, we explore how to use silence strategically, when to apply it, when to hold back, and when to walk away forever. Because sometimes the best way to win is to simply disappear. Silence is powerful, but only if used correctly. Some people wield it as a tool for self-respect, for setting boundaries, for reclaiming control. Others misuse it, turning it into a form of manipulation, a weapon of cruelty. So when should silence be used? And more importantly, when is it truly justified? Tonight, we dive into the art of strategic silence. Because silence is not revenge, it's a mirror. And when used correctly, it forces people to confront the one thing they fear the most, the truth about themselves. Not all silence is created equal. There is a difference between ignoring someone out of immaturity and withholding your energy as a form of self-respect. The first is done out of spite, the second out of necessity. So when is silence justified? When does it shift from being a passive reaction to becoming a deliberate choice? Silence is justified when words have been exhausted, when you have repeated yourself, explained yourself, and given chance after chance, only to be ignored, dismissed, or taken for granted. It is justified when someone constantly violates your boundaries, disrespects your emotions, or manipulates your kindness. When conversations turn into cycles, and no matter how much you express your feelings, nothing changes. This is when words become meaningless. This is when silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. There is a certain type of person who cannot handle silence. The manipulator, the narcissist, the one who thrives on control, who feeds off reactions, who needs you to engage so they can twist your words and gaslight your emotions. For these people, silence is the most unbearable form of punishment, because it denies them what they crave the most, attention. And when you remove that attention, when you refuse to give them the reaction they are fishing for, something fascinating happens. They begin to unravel. At first, they may act unaffected. They may even laugh at your silence, convincing themselves that they have won. But inside, there is a shift, a creeping realization that the hold they once had over you is slipping away. And as time passes, that realization grows. They start to wonder why you aren't reacting, why you aren't fighting, why you aren't playing their game anymore. And the longer the silence lasts, the more desperate they become. This is why narcissists hate being ignored, because silence forces them to face the one thing they have spent their entire lives avoiding, their own reflection. Without someone else's energy to feed off, They are left alone with the emptiness inside them. And that is a feeling they cannot tolerate. But silence isn't just for dealing with narcissists and manipulators. It is also a tool for self-respect, a way to say, without words, I am done explaining myself. I am done begging for basic decency. I am done giving energy to those who refuse to value it. One of the most powerful ways to use silence is through something called the no-contact rule. This is the act of completely cutting someone off, not as an act of revenge, but as a means of self-preservation. No contact means no texts, no calls, no checking their social media, no responding if they reach out. It is the act of completely removing yourself from their orbit. And what happens when you go no contact? In most cases, the person you cut off begins to panic. At first, they may act indifferent, but over time, they start to wonder. They start to question. They start to realize that the one thing they took for granted is now gone. This is the beauty of walking away in silence. It leaves an emptiness behind, and in that emptiness, the other person is forced to confront the consequences of their actions. There is a misconception that silence is passive, that ignoring someone means you are weak, that it means you are afraid to speak up. But in reality, silence is a conscious decision. It is a statement without words, and when used strategically, it is a way to reclaim power that was once lost. Because silence is not just about closing the door, it's about making sure the door stays closed. The problem is, most people don't know how to sit in silence. They crave closure. They want to explain why they are walking away. They want to have the final word. But the truth is, the final word is often unnecessary, because the loudest statement you can make is the one they never hear. When you remove yourself from a situation, when you step back and refuse to engage, you send a message that cannot be misunderstood. That message is simple. I am not playing this game anymore. I am not chasing. I am not explaining. I am done. And that kind of silence, it is deafening. So what happens after silence? What happens when you remove yourself from someone's life, when you take away your energy, your attention, your presence? At first, they may convince themselves that it doesn't matter. They may act unbothered, post about how they don't care, tell themselves that they are better off without you, but deep down there is doubt, and that doubt begins to grow. Because silence forces people to think. And thinking, for some, is the most uncomfortable thing of all. They will wonder if they made a mistake, if they should have treated you differently, if they should have valued you more, and the irony. By the time they realize it, it's usually too late. This is why silence is so powerful, because unlike words, it cannot be debated, it cannot be argued with, it cannot be twisted into something it is not. It simply exists as a reminder of what once was and what will never be again. But silence is not just a tool for dealing with others. It is also a tool for self-mastery. And in the next section, we explore exactly how to use it strategically, not just to heal, but to ensure that those who took you for granted feel the full weight of your absence. Because true power is not in anger. It is not in proving a point. True power is in knowing when to walk away and never looking back. Silence is powerful, but only when used with intention. To truly make someone feel your absence, it's not enough to simply ignore them. You must understand the psychology of detachment, the art of withholding energy in a way that leaves a lasting impact. Because silence isn't just about removing yourself from someone's life. It's about making sure they feel the void you leave behind. Tonight, we break down the silent strategies that ensure your absence is not just noticed, but felt. How to make them question everything. How to disappear from their world in a way that haunts them. And how to reclaim your control, not by fighting for their attention, but by making them fight for yours. Because true power isn't in forcing someone to regret losing you. It's in making sure that, when they do, there's nothing they can do about it. The key to making someone feel your absence is how you detach. Most people go silent while still looking back, checking their phone, hoping for a response, wondering if the other person cares. And that's where they fail. Because silence only works when it is absolute. When you walk away from someone, you must truly remove yourself from their orbit. That means no texts, no checking their social media, no asking mutual friends about them. Because the moment they sense you are still lingering, they know they still have power over you. But when you truly disappear, when you cut off every point of contact, when you remove every trace of your energy, that's when the silence becomes deafening. That's when they start to realize what they lost, and by the time they do, it's already too late. There is a psychological reason why being ignored is more painful than being rejected. When someone yells at you, insults you, or even tells you they hate you, at least you have certainty. You know where they stand, you know how they feel. But when someone simply vanishes, when they remove themselves from your life without a word, that is when the mind spirals. They start to wonder, was it something I said? Was it something I did? Do they even care? Have they moved on? These questions become a loop, a never-ending cycle of doubt that eats away at their confidence. And this is where strategic silence comes in. When you make someone feel your absence the right way, you don't just leave them behind, you make them question everything. And that doubt, it stays with them longer than any words ever could. The key to making your absence unforgettable is emotional detachment. You must train yourself to not react, not check, not wonder, because the moment you slip, the moment you reach out, even just once, you erase all the power you built. So how do you stay strong? How do you resist the urge to check up on them? The answer is simple. Shift your focus from them to yourself. Instead of waiting for them to miss you, use that energy to rebuild your own life. Work on yourself. Improve your mindset, your health, your goals. Become so focused on your own growth that, eventually, you stop caring whether they notice your absence or not. And that's the paradox. The moment you stop caring whether they feel your silence is the moment they start feeling it the most. One of the most powerful ways to make someone feel your absence is through something called indifference. This is different from anger, and it's different from avoidance. Indifference is the complete absence of emotional investment. If someone reaches out to you and you respond with anger, they know they still affect you. If you cry, beg, or try to explain yourself, they know they still hold space in your mind. But when you respond with nothing, when they try to get a reaction from you and you give them silence, that is when they realize they have lost all control over you. This is why ignoring someone is often more painful than arguing with them. Because when you argue, you are still engaging. You are still giving them a part of your energy. But when you become indifferent, when they can't provoke you, can't manipulate you, can't get anything from you, that's when they start to crumble. Many people think the best way to get revenge is to prove something, to show the other person that they made a mistake, to make them regret their actions. But real revenge is much simpler. It's not about proving anything. It's about removing yourself so completely that they are left with nothing but their own regret. This is why the best silent revenge is success. Not success in a superficial way, not flaunting, not trying to make them jealous, but true success. And the irony, by the time they regret losing you, you won't even care anymore. Silence is not just about making someone feel your absence. It is about training yourself to stop needing their presence. The ultimate goal is not to make them miss you. The ultimate goal is to get to a place where, if they ever do come back, you no longer want them. And that is where the true power lies, because silence is not just the lack of words. It is the presence of self-respect, the presence of growth, the presence of knowing that you are no longer willing to waste your energy on those who never deserved it in the first place. But silence is also a game of time. The longer you hold it, the more powerful it becomes. And in the next section, we explore the ultimate silent revenge, how to make them chase you without ever lifting a finger. Because when you truly master silence, you never have to ask for respect again. It is given to you whether they like it or not. Revenge is often seen as action, a dramatic confrontation, a calculated move, a final word that delivers the perfect blow. But the most powerful revenge isn't loud, it isn't aggressive, it isn't even planned. The most powerful revenge is silence. Because silence doesn't just make them miss you, it makes them chase you. Most people think that in order to make someone regret losing you, they have to prove something, show that they've moved on, show that they're successful, show that they're doing better without them. But the truth is, the less you try to prove, the more powerful your absence becomes. When you try to make someone regret losing you, they still control your actions. Your energy is still directed toward them. But when you truly disappear, when you remove yourself from their world completely, that is when their mind starts to work against them. Because the worst thing you can do to someone who expects your attention is to stop giving it to them. At first, they may not notice. Some people are so used to being chased, to being the center of attention, that they assume you'll always be there. But as time passes, doubt starts to creep in. Why haven't they reached out? Why aren't they reacting? Have they moved on? Were they never really affected by me at all? And that thought, it is terrifying. Because for the first time, they realize something that had never crossed their mind before. Maybe they were the forgettable one. This is the beauty of silent revenge. It works not by forcing someone to regret losing you, but by making them realize, on their own, that they never should have taken you for granted in the first place. So how do you make them chase you? How do you ensure that your silence is felt in a way that shifts the power back into your hands? It starts with absolute detachment, not pretending to move on while secretly hoping they'll return. Not waiting for them to notice your silence, but genuinely letting go, because the more at peace you become, the more unsettling it is for them. Think about it. If someone expects you to be heartbroken, to be checking up on them, to be lingering in the shadows, and instead, you vanish. You show no signs of struggle, no signs of missing them, no signs that they had any lasting impact on your life. That is the ultimate blow to their ego. Because nothing makes someone more desperate for your attention than the realization that they never mattered as much as they thought they did. One of the most powerful techniques for making someone chase you is something called the gray rock method. This is a psychological strategy used to make yourself so emotionally uninteresting that the other person begins to crave your attention again. Instead of engaging with them, instead of reacting, instead of showing emotion, you become neutral. Boring, unbothered, you give them nothing to work with. No excitement, no drama, no validation. And what happens when you stop feeding someone emotional energy? They start trying harder to get it from you. They will test you. They will poke at you. They will try to trigger a response. And when they realize that no matter what they do, you do not react, that's when the real panic sets in. Because if someone can no longer affect you, they no longer have control over you. And that is a reality they cannot accept. But silence isn't just about ignoring someone. It's about creating a psychological shift that makes them feel your absence on a deeper level. And the key to that is mystery. When people don't have access to your life, their mind fills in the blanks. They start imagining what you're doing, who you're with, how you're feeling. And more often than not, the stories they create in their mind are far more powerful than anything you could ever show them. This is why social media can ruin silent revenge. Because when you post updates, when you show what you're doing, you give them answers. You remove the mystery, and mystery is what keeps people obsessed. The less they know about you, the more they want to know. The more unavailable you seem, the more desirable you become. Because human nature is wired this way, we value what is scarce, and we take for granted what is always accessible. And when you become a mystery, when they can't figure out what you're thinking, what you're feeling, whether you've moved on or not, that is when your absence starts to haunt them. There is one final stage of silent revenge, and it is the most powerful one of all. It is not about making them miss you. It is not about making them regret. It is about reaching a point where, even if they come back, you no longer care. Because the true test of power is not whether they chase you. It is whether, when they finally do, you are already too far ahead to look back. Most people break when they receive that message, the "I miss you" text, the random check-in after weeks or months of silence, and this is where most people fail. And when you reach that point, that is when you have truly won. So what happens next? What happens when you've mastered silence, when you've reclaimed your power, when you've removed yourself from toxic cycles and manipulative games? Where do you go from here? The answer is simple. You use silence for something even greater. Because silence is not just a tool for revenge. It is a tool for influence, for respect, for self-mastery. And in the next section, we explore how to use silence not just to break others, but to build yourself into someone who no longer needs to play the game at all. Because true strength is not in walking away. It is in becoming someone so powerful that no one would ever risk losing you again. Silence is not just a weapon, it is a foundation. It is the space where self-respect is built, where strength is cultivated, where power is refined. Once you master silence as a form of detachment, as a strategy for reclaiming control, the next step is learning how to use it as a way to elevate yourself beyond the need for games, validation, or revenge. Because true mastery of silence is not about making someone regret losing you. It is about becoming someone so valuable, so powerful, so self-contained, that losing you is something no one would ever risk again. Tonight, we explore how to use silence to command respect, build influence, and develop the kind of presence that speaks louder than words. Because the final form of silent revenge is not about who chases you, it's about ensuring that, from this moment on, you are the one who decides who gets access to you. Why do the most powerful people in the world speak the least? Why do the most influential leaders, the most successful entrepreneurs, and the most respected figures in history all have one thing in common? They understand that words are like currency. The more you use them, the less valuable they become. In every room, the one who speaks the most is rarely the one with the most power. The one who dominates the conversation, who argues, who tries to prove something, they reveal their hand too quickly. But the one who listens, observes, and only speaks when necessary, that is the person everyone pays attention to. Because silence creates mystery. It forces people to wonder what you are thinking, what you are planning, whether you are someone they need to impress. And that alone shifts the power dynamic in your favor. So if you want to command respect, if you want to be someone people take seriously, start speaking less. Start letting others reveal themselves first. Because when you master the art of controlled silence, you will never have to demand respect again. It will be given to you without question. One of the most powerful ways to use silence is in negotiation. Whether in business, relationships, or personal interactions, the ability to sit in silence without rushing to fill the void can change everything. In high-stakes negotiations, the person who speaks first usually loses. Because silence creates discomfort, it makes the other person nervous. It makes them reveal more than they intended, and in that moment of uncertainty, they often concede more than they originally planned. The same applies in personal relationships. When someone tries to provoke you, to get a reaction out of you, the moment you refuse to engage, the moment you let the silence hang in the air, they start scrambling. They start backtracking. They start feeling the weight of their own words. Because silence forces people to fill in the gaps themselves. And more often than not, their own insecurities will speak louder than anything you could have said. This is why mastering silence is not just about ignoring people, it's about using it strategically. Learning when to hold back, learning when to let someone expose themselves, learning that in every situation, the one who controls the silence controls the outcome. But beyond strategy, silence is also the greatest tool for self-mastery. Because when you remove distractions, when you stop chasing external validation, when you no longer waste energy explaining yourself to those who don't deserve it, you are left with the most powerful thing of all: clarity. Most people are afraid of silence. They fill their lives with noise, endless conversations, constant social media scrolling, meaningless arguments, because they are terrified of being alone with their own thoughts. But those who embrace silence, they develop a level of self-awareness that others will never reach. This is where true power is built, in the quiet moments, in the discipline of not reacting, in the ability to sit with discomfort, to think before speaking, to choose your words carefully, knowing that when you do speak, people will listen. And once you master silence, once you become someone who no longer needs attention, who no longer craves approval, who no longer gives energy to the wrong people, something incredible happens. You become someone who cannot be manipulated. You become someone who others instinctively respect. You become someone who holds power simply by existing in a way that others cannot ignore. Because silence, in its highest form, is not about revenge. It is about elevation. It is about reaching a level of self-sufficiency, of confidence, of internal strength, where you are no longer controlled by the need for validation, where your presence is enough, where people notice you not because you are the loudest in the room, but because your silence speaks volumes. This is the final stage of the art of silence, not using it to break others, but using it to build yourself. Not playing games, but rising so far above them that the idea of chasing, proving, or explaining yourself no longer exists in your reality. Because when you truly understand the power of silence, you will never again have to fight for attention. You will never again have to force someone to respect you. You will never again waste energy on those who do not deserve it. You will simply exist, and that will be enough. Thank you for watching. If this documentary opened your eyes to the power of silence, be sure to share it.